Hello everyone and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we are going to cover comparison operators. Please note that here we are in notebook number 3 and we are going to cover comparison operators, logical operators, and conditional statements as well. Please note that you are going to find, as always, 2 notebooks. One of them is the skeleton notebook, and the other one is the solution notebook, which is what I have here open for us. Okay, so as you guys can see here, we are going to cover the comparison operators first. So we're going to learn about how to do the comparison operators, what to expect out of them, and as always, I try to include mini challenges for you guys after introducing each new concept. Next, we are going to cover logical operators. We're going to learn about logical operators, we're going to learn about and, or, how to do all these conditions, and we are going to conclude that with 2 mini challenges. And last part, we are going to cover conditional statements. So conditional statements are super important when it comes to learning, I would say, any programming language, and we're going to use conditional statements extensively throughout the course. Specifically, in part number 2 and in part number 3. So we're going to learn how to do if condition, we're going to learn how to do if else condition, and here we are going to finish it as well with 3 mini challenges. And that's it. So basically, let's go ahead and cover the first topic, which is comparison operators. So let's go ahead and start with the skeleton notebook. And as always, I highly recommend that you guys start along with the our skeleton notebook and code along with me. Okay, so let's get started with the comparison operators. So comparison operator outputs could be either true or false. Think of it this way. Let's assume that you wanted to compare, for example, 2 numbers. Let's say you have stock price number 1 and you have stock price number 2, and you just wanted to make a condition, just, like compare stock price 1 and stock price number 2. So what I could do is I can say, okay, let's go ahead and define stock price, stock 1 underscore price, and maybe put, let's say, $1,000 in it, and then define another stock 2 price and put again $1,000 in it. And basically, if I wanted to compare stock 1 price and stock 2 price, I can use the, what we call it, equal comparison operator. So in order to perform the comparison operator, I can say the following. I can say, is stock 1 underscore price equals to stock 2 underscore price? Okay, so think of it this way. You are simply asking a question. Okay, is stock number 1 price equals to stock number 2 price or not? Well, if the answer is yes, if the answer is true, then the answer will be true. Well, if the answer is false, the outcome will be false. Think of it as the output will be simply Boolean. And please know that we covered already Boolean data types before in the previous couple of lectures. So again, it's simply you're asking a question, is stock number 1 price equals to stock 2 price or not? And again, true will be the output if the condition has been satisfied, and it will be false output if the condition is not satisfied or if the condition simply is not true. And a very important point here to highlight is that the equals is a comparison operators. However, one equal only is an assignment. So if I say x equals to 3, that means you are defining a variable called x and you are putting number 3 in it. You are not doing any comparison at all. But if you say equals equal, that's totally different story. We are not putting stock 2 price in stock 1 price. We're not doing that. We are comparing both of them together, and we're expecting kind of a reply or an answer which either true or false. All right, so let's go ahead and run this cell. So let's go ahead and run it, or you can obviously press Shift Enter. And here we go. So you'll find the answer right now is true, simply. If you change that and make it maybe $2,000 and you run it again, the answer will be false, which makes sense. All right, let's go ahead and cover what we call it greater than or equal operator. So let's assume that I have my stock underscore 1 price and now I put, let's say, $5,000 in it. And I have maybe stock 2 price right now, and maybe I put $1,000 in it. And now I wanted to say or compare if stock 1 price greater than or equal stock 2 price or not. So in order to do that, I can say stock 1 price is greater than or equal, so you write them back to back like that, and then you write stock 2 price. So if you press Shift Enter, that's what you get. Basically, stock 1 price, which is $5,000, well, it is greater than $1,000. And that's why the answer here is true. Okay. And if you guys remember, again, I tried to reiterate this concept because it might be a little bit confusing for some of you guys who maybe are new to programming, is that the equal is a comparison operator. However, only one equal is used for variable assignment. For example, I can maybe define stock number 1 price. Again, tab should autocomplete. And I can put, let's say, $10 in it. Okay, and I can, if I wanted to say what's in stock 1 price, if you press Shift Enter, here we go. You basically put 10 in stock 1 price, and that's what you get, which is number 10. Okay. Also, comparison operators can also work with strings as well. We have covered strings before, and we learned that what a string is, it is just a sequence of characters. So what I could do right now, I can say, well, I have 2 strings. One of them is finance, and the other string is maybe finance as well. So you can, if you press Shift Enter, that's what you get. Well, finance was exactly the same as finance. What if I, for example, say, well, the word is the same, but I'm just going to make a simple change. Instead of doing the first letter here, instead of having it uppercase, I'm just going to put it as a lowercase. So I'm going to say finance instead. If you press Shift Enter, you will find that the answer here, or the feedback, is false. And this is very important. You need to make sure that both strings have to exactly match, which means if you have lowercase here, they have to be lowercase here. If you have one character that is uppercase, in order for the comparison operator to generate true, it has to exactly match, which means this one has to be uppercase as well. All right. What about not equal comparison operators? So for example, I can go ahead and define stock 1 price. I can put $1,000 in it. I can define stock 2 price, and maybe I can put, let's say, another $1,000 in it. And what if I wanted to say not equal? This is simply the condition that I'm trying to add or ask. So I can say stock 1 price is not, when I say not equal, it's represented as exclamation mark and then equal. So I can say not equals to, and then I can say stock 2 price. So if you press Shift Enter, that's what you get. So basically you're saying, okay, is stock 1 price not equal stock 2 price? Well, the answer is false. That's not true, because stock 1 price is equal stock 2 price. This one is $1,000 and this one is $1,000 as well. All right, so obviously if you change that to maybe, let's say, $2,000 and you run it, well, you get true. Well, because why? Because $1,000 is not equal to $2,000, which makes sense. All right, okay, so that's all I have for this lecture. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Before we conclude, I have a mini challenge for you. So the mini challenge says the following: without executing the code cell, what will this code generate? So I have stock 1 price and I put $15 in it. I have stock 2 price and we put $10 in it. And I wanted to do the following. I wanted to say if stock 1 price was equals to stock 2 price, is that true or false? Not equal, greater than, and less than. So please go ahead, pause the video, and I will see you guys after the challenge. All right, I hope you guys were able to figure out the challenge. Simply put, I can say the following. Stock 1 price is equals to stock 2 price. Well, that's false, because this is 15 and this is 10. So that's the first answer. And then stock 1 price is not equal to stock 2 price. Well, that's true, because one of them is 10 and the other is 15. Is stock 1 price greater than stock 2 price? Well, 15 is greater than 10. Well, that's true. Stock 1 price is less than stock 2 price. Well, 15 is not less than stock 2 price, which is 10. Well, the answer is false. So what if I wanted to double check my answer? Well, what you guys could do is that you can double click here on the text data for the mini challenge. I can copy all that text here, and you press Shift Enter so you can convert it back again into this format. And you can insert the code cell here, and then you can paste the cells. And if you press Shift Enter, that's what you get. You get false, true, true, false, which is exactly what we expected. All right, okay, so that's all I have for this lecture. I hope you guys enjoyed it. In the next lecture, we are going to cover logical operators. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and see you in the next lecture. Hello everyone, and welcome to this lecture on logical operators. In the previous lecture, we have been able to cover comparison operators. If you guys remember, we learned about how to compare two numbers, greater than, less than. We learned also how to compare two strings together. Okay, so let's cover logical operators. So logical operators, we can simply perform what we call it and or operators. So let's cover that in a little bit more details. So for and logical operators, most arguments must be true in order for the output to be true. So let's assume that we have two variables, okay? And in order for the output to set to be true, I need to make sure that both of them are true, or both of the conditions, I would say, has to be satisfied in order for the output to be true. Okay, so let me show you a couple of examples. So let's assume that I have true condition, so I'm going to say true, and true, and if you press Shift Enter, well, the answer will be true. Because simply you have, when I say true, think of it as kind of, you have ones, okay? You have 1 or 0, which is true or false. These are the Boolean data types. So if you have 1 and 1, then the answer will be 1. Okay, pretty simple. Well, what if I have 0 and 1? Well, the answer will be 0. So for example, if I say false and true, if you press Shift Enter, well, the answer will be false. And kind of the way, like a simple way of looking at it, basically in order for the AND operation here, logical operators, to generate true, both conditions has to be true. So this one has to be true and this one has to be true. Simply, it only generates true only once. And, like, think of it as kind of, like a multiplication in a way, okay? It's not multiplication. Just think of it as multiplication. In order to have two numbers, and these numbers, the only available options are these zeros and ones. So, for example, if you have 1 and 0, the outcome will be 0. If you have 0 and 1, the outcome will be 0 as well. If you have 1 and 1, that's the only condition that will generate 1, okay, or true, in which we have both conditions are true. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Let's assume it's false and false. Well, Shift Enter, the answer will be false. 0 and 0, the answer will be 0. Another type of logical operators is known as OR, okay? And simply, in order for the OR logical operators to generate true, only one of the two or more coming out into it, inputs to the logical operators, has to be true. So if only one is true, that's it. We're good to go. The outcome will be true as well. So for example, let's assume I have true or true. If you press Shift Enter, the answer will be true, which means 1 or 1, the answer will be 1. Because again, at least one of them was 1. If you have 1 or 0, well, the outcome will be 1 as well. Because again, as long as there is only 1 in the operation, or the input, my apologies, to the OR logical operators, the output will be 1, which is simply here I'm saying true or false. Shift Enter, the outcome will be true. 0 or 1, again, false, or true. Shift Enter, the outcome will be true. The only condition where the OR logical operators generates 0 or generates false, that's when both inputs, to think of it as to the gate, is essentially zeros. So that's the only condition, simply. So if, for example, here if I have false or false, shift enter, that's the only condition where am I going to generate false. Okay? And I try to include here as much, I would say, details as possible. So note that this is the only case in which the OR logical operator generates a false output. That's when both inputs are zeros or both are false. Okay. Let's go ahead and cover additional examples. Let's assume that I have the following. I have, for example, this condition. I have 10 greater than 3 and 9 equals to 3. Okay, so let's take a look at this condition. So first, is 10 greater than 3? Well, the answer is true. And that's why here I have true, okay? The AND will stay as is, which is I have AND. And then I'm going to ask another condition. Is 9 equals to 3? Well, the answer is false. So here I'm going to come up with false. And because I have AND operation here, which AND logical operators, so true and false, or 1 and 0, the answer will be 0, will be false. And this is essentially will be the outcome out of this mix between comparison and logical operators. And that's where you get here the answer is false. Let's take a look at another example. Let's assume, for example, I have the following. I have maybe 9 greater than 3, or I have 12 equals to 10. So let's take a look at it again. Is 9 greater than 3? Well, the answer is true. Okay. Or is 12 equals 10? Well, the answer is false. So true or false, which is 1 or 0, the answer is true. The answer is 1. And that's what you get here out of it. Press shift enter, obviously you will get true. Okay? All right. So now it's time for 2 mini challenges. The first mini challenge is, without executing the code cell, what will these lines of code generate? And please give it a shot. Here I have a string here, not equal, a string and condition and another condition. And then I have again finance, finance, or another condition and another condition. The next mini challenge is, without executing the code cell, what will these lines of code generate? Here I have A and B, and I wanted to compare these two numbers. So I have some OR operations here and some conditional operators as well. All right, and what I want you guys to do as well is, after you come up with the answer, I want you guys to please go ahead and copy these code cells and try to run them just to confirm your answer. All right, so please go ahead, pause the video, and I will see you guys after the challenge. All right, I hope you guys were able to figure out the challenge. Let's give it a shot. Okay, so the first part is, without executing the code cell, what will these 2 lines of code generate? Okay, so here I have print finance, all of it is uppercase, is not equals to finance, which is all uppercase as well. Well, if you check this condition, you're saying, okay, well, the way I look at it is, finance is actually exactly the same as finance. So if I ask a question, is finance not equal finance? Well, the answer is false. So that will be the first part of it. So here I'm going to say the following. I'm going to say, well, the first part, which is here, is actually false. Okay. And then I'm going to leave the AND as is, which is what I have here. And then I have another condition. Is 10 greater than 3? Well, the answer is true. That's actually right. So true. I'm going to say AND. Is 20 equals to 20? Well, the answer is that's true. So if I have false and true, think of it as a multiplication again. You know, if there is 1 0, the outcome will be 0. And that's what you get, the outcome will be false. Okay, so that's good. The next condition is, let's go ahead and do the following. So I have finance not equals to finance. Well, this condition is actually true. Why? Because again, one of them here is uppercase, and here all the letters are uppercase, so they're actually not equal to each other. So this is actually true. Okay, so let's do that. And I'm going to say, or, is 16 greater than 20? Well, the answer is false. I'm going to say, or, is 25 equals to 25? Well, the answer is true. Looks great. So now I have true or false or true. Well, if we have 1 single input to the OR gate, and one of them is actually true, the outcome will be true as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually confirm that what we're doing is actually right. So what I could do here, I can copy these two, I can run the cell again, I can insert here another code cell, paste it here, remove these two, and shift enter. And that's what you get. You get simply false, which is what we got here, and then true, which is what we got here. Perfect. Okay. The next mini challenge is, without executing the code cell, what will these two lines of code generate? Here I have A equals to 5, B equals to 3.5, and I wanted to do the following. Print out A equals to B. Well, the question is A equals to B? Well, the answer is false. This is 5, and this is 3.5. So I have false. Or, I'm going to say, is A not equal B? Well, the answer is true. Okay, so that's good. So false or true. So 0 or 1, the outcome will be true, will be 1. Okay, looks good. So let's comment that out. Let's do the other one. So here, is A equals to B? Well, the answer is false. And then I say, and is A not equal B? The answer is true. So if I have 0 and 1, the answer will be false, will be 0. So let's go ahead and confirm. So I'm going to copy these two lines of code here, actually all of them. Okay, and I'm going to insert the new code cell, paste it here, shift enter, and that's what we get. We get true followed by false, which is exactly what we got here. True followed by false. All right, I know this is quite, I would say, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And that's all I have for this task. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please note that the next task, which is the conditional statement, is actually super important. So please stay tuned, and I will see you guys in the next lecture. Hello everyone, and welcome to this lecture. I'm very excited because in this lecture, we are going to cover a very important concept known as conditional statements. So if you guys remember, in the previous task, we have been able to learn about logical operators. And before that, we covered comparison operators. Okay, so let's go ahead and cover conditional statements, or what's known as if-else statement. So a simple if-else statement could be written in Python as follows. You can say if, and then you write the condition. For example, if, let's say, x is greater than y, and simply right now, I have two outcomes out of this condition, which is either the condition was true or it's false. If you guys remember, the output will be Boolean outputs, which is only have one of two options, either 1 or 0. And the if condition is actually pretty simple. If this condition is true, what Python will execute simply is statement number 1. So whatever I'm going to write here, this part will be executed in my code. And please note that there is what we call it indentation here that we add. When I say indentation, it's simply a white space at the beginning of the line, indicating that this is simply the scope of the code. This is simply the body of the if condition. Well, what if the condition is not true? Well, if the condition is not true, and this is very important, I'm going to skip this statement and I'm going to go ahead and execute the else part, which is simply statement number 2. And please note that also statement number 2 has an indent here, and this is actually, I would say, one of the like a super powerful way when it comes to Python, because in other languages you need to add curly braces, instead of the indentation. It just becomes super messy, and then you have like tons of like curly braces. Here with Python, it's actually super simple, really easy. You just add space, white space here, like an indentation, and that's it. It's actually super simple, and that will indicate the body of the if condition. Please note that at the end of the if condition and at the end of the else condition, I also have this colon symbol here. Okay, so here we go. So if the condition was true, I'm going to execute the first indented statement, which is statement number 1. If the condition is not true, then I'm going to execute the else indented statement, which is essentially this statement. And please note that Python uses indentation or white space to indicate code sections and the scope as well of the code. Okay, I know it sounds maybe a little bit confusing, especially if you guys haven't maybe like done any programming in the past, but please note, trust me, it's actually super simple. So let's take a look at a practical example. Let's go ahead and write the following. So I'm going to say if, and then I'm going to write a condition. I'm going to say, okay, is 10 greater than 9? And then I'm going to add a colon. Please note that here, if you add a condition, which is what I have here, and then I added a colon here, which is what I have in here too, okay? And then you press enter, and you will find that here, which is super powerful, is that the indentation is already made for you, so you're not gonna forget it per se. And if 10 is greater than 9, what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna say the following: print. You can say anything you want. So for example, here I'm gonna say, okay, if condition is true. Okay, so if this print statement is executed, that means the condition was actually true. Okay, all right, and then you press enter, and then you go back again so you can execute the else. So I'm going to say else, you add colon, you press enter, and then again you write print, and here I can say, for example, if condition is false. Okay, all right, looks great. So let's go ahead and run it and see what's going to happen. If you press shift enter, this is simply what you get. You will find that because 10 was greater than 9, so basically the outcome of this question is true, then you will find that the body of the if condition has been executed, which is simply if condition is true. And you will find that if the body of the if condition has been executed, you will find that the else part will be skipped. So we are not going to print if condition is false. That's it, done. We only do one of them, okay? And that's what we got here. Okay, what if I change that to maybe, let's say, number, for example, 8? So the question is 8 greater than 9? Well, the answer is false. So that means that this part will not going to be executed, and the else part will be executed. So I should see if condition is false. So if you press shift enter, that's what you get. If condition is false, which means only the else part has been executed. Okay, let's go back and put it 10 again and run it again. So if condition is true. Okay, let's take a look at another example. So I'm gonna say, okay, if you find 5 equals to 10, please do the following: print out. And then I'm going to do the following, same deal. So I'm going to say if condition is true. And here I'm going to say else, colon as well, print out. Again, I'm going to say if condition is false. If you press shift enter, that's what you get. So basically here I'm saying, okay, is 5 equals to 10? Well, the answer is false. That's not true, which means I am only going to execute the else part. And that's why I'm going to print if condition is false. Okay, what if I wanted to maybe have 3 conditions, for example? What I mean by that is, let's assume that I have, let's say, 3 parts in my code that I wanted to... Okay. So a very important point here to outline is what's actually the point of having an if condition. So basically, the if condition will help you create 2 independent paths in your code. And that's what we're doing here. Basically, I can say, okay, if you find this condition is satisfied, well, go there. So execute this. And I can write here whatever I want. I can maybe execute functions. I can do like tens of lines of code or maybe hundreds of lines of code. And if this condition, well, is not satisfied, do this. And now I was able to create some logic in my code. And that's super powerful, again, when we cover the Python for finance section in part number 2. And we're also going to cover that in the AI and machine learning part in part number 3 of the course. Okay. What if I wanted to create, let's say, 3 branches or kind of 3 paths in my code. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to say, okay, if you find 5 is equals to 7, well, do this. Print out. I'm going to say first statement is true. And that's the first part. And then here, I'm going to add another else, we'll call it else if condition. And we write it as that. We write if, so I'm going to say else if you find 2 equals to 4, again, colon again, I'm going to go ahead and print out second statement is true. And if that doesn't happen, I'm going to say else, and then I'm going to say print, I'm going to say last statement is true. Okay? All right, so basically what I have done right now is I added 2 if conditions, and here what I have is I have 3 branches, or 3 kind of, I would say, independent paths in my code. So I have this path, and this path. Okay, so if you press Shift Enter, that's what you get. So the first question is, if 5 equals to 7, well, the answer is false, which means I will not going to execute this. I'm going to skip this. And then I'm going to go here, okay? And then here I have another condition. So I'm going to say else if condition. I'm going to say, okay, is 2 equals to 4? Well, the answer is false. That's not true. So I am going to skip this one as well. And then I'm going to go here. And that's it. Because there is no condition here, I will have to execute this one. And that's what we got here at the end, which is last statement is true. Okay, let's take a look at another example. I'm going to say if you find 5 is less than 7, print out. And here I'm going to say first statement is true. And then I'm going to add another condition. I'm going to call it else if condition again. I'm going to say 2 is greater than 4, add a colon, print out, second statement is true. And lastly, I'm going to say else, and here I'm going to go ahead and print out, I'm going to say last statement is true. All right, so what do you guys think? What do you think which statement will be executed? Well, let's go ahead. Without even running it, let's understand the logic. So here I'm asking, is 5 less than 7? Well, the answer is true. This condition is actually right. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to execute this part. So I'm going to print first statement is true, and that's it. I'm just going to exit. That's it, done. Okay, because one has been executed, that's it. You don't even need to check this one anymore. That's what we are doing here. So if you press Shift Enter, that's what you get. First statement was true because it has been correctly or successfully executed. Okay, so let's take another example. Let's assume that I'm going to take an input from the user and I'm going to give them or grant them or deny them access accordingly. So for example, I'm going to say name equals to, and then I'm going to say input. If you guys remember, I can ask basically a customer a question. I'm going to say enter your name. All right. And what I could do right now, I can say the following. Well, if the customer or if the client insert, let's say, their first name right, which is, let's say, Ryan in this example. If they insert Ryan, then I will give them access. If not, I will deny them access. So now I took the input from the user, and now I can do a simple if-else condition. I can say if you find the name was equals to, and then I'm going to create a string. I'm going to call it Ryan here, assuming that the first letter has to be uppercase and the rest is lowercase. And then I'm going to add colon. Here I'm going to print out to the customer, well, access granted. Okay, so that's a good sign. I'm going to say else, well, if that wasn't true, if the name was anything but this name, I'm going to tell them, well, best of luck, that's not true, access denied. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a shot. Shift Enter. So here, basically, as we are stuck in a loop, and we are expecting an input to be insert here. So here I'm going to say, let's start with the wrong stuff first. I'm going to say Ryan, and intentionally here I put R as lowercase. So if you press enter, that's what you get. You will find that access has been denied. Why? Because what I insert here is RYAN, which is lowercase. So here, this condition is actually false because, as I mentioned, when I compare two strings together, I have to make sure that they exactly match each other. So if all of them are uppercase, if one of them is uppercase, the second one, all of it, all characters, has to be uppercase as well. So that means now I'm comparing RYAN, which is R lowercase, with R uppercase, which means this condition is false. Then I'm going to skip that part and only execute the else part. And that's what I got here. Access has been denied. Okay. What if I, let's say run it again, and I insert the name right this time. Okay, RYAN, press enter, it will tell you, well, access has been granted because now I insert the exact same name that matches my condition here. Okay, all right. What if I wanted to make, let's say, my code a little bit more robust? Maybe I want to make it, for example, case insensitive, which means, well, if the user inserts all of them uppercase, one of them lowercase, maybe even if the first character only is uppercase, well, I'm going to give them access no matter what. So I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say name equals to, and then I'm going to create again another input, and I'm going to say enter your name. Okay. And then I am going to say if you find the name was equals to, I'm going to start with the first one, which is RYAN, and the R is uppercase. But now what I need to do is I need to add what we call it logical operators. If you guys remember, we covered the logical operators before, and these are essentially the or and. If you guys remember here, these are logical operators. So what I could do right now, I can say the following. If name equals to Ryan, or I can say name is equals to, and maybe if the customer insert all of them uppercase, and then I'm going to say or, maybe the name was equals to, and let's assume here the customer, for example, insert all of them lowercase. So basically, if any of these conditions are satisfied, if this one, or this one, or this one, if any of them is right, I'm going to give them, well, print out access has been granted. Okay? And I'm going to say else. If that doesn't work, I'm going to go ahead and print out, well, access has been denied. And that's it. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. If you press Shift Enter, that's what you get. So let's assume that I insert, for example, all of it uppercase. If you press Enter, well, access has been granted. Why? What happened here is when you insert your name as an uppercase, Ryan here, you will go here and that's what's going to happen. This condition will be false. Or here, RYAN, all of it is uppercase. This one is all uppercase. So this one will be true. So now I have false, true, and then here I have false. Because now I have false or true or false, because the one of them had true, then the outcome of everything here will be true. And that's what we covered before when we covered logical operators. So now we basically know the comparison operators, we understand logical operators, and now we know what's going to happen essentially when we actually combine them in, let's say, an if-else condition as we have in here. Okay? All right, so now it's time for 3 mini challenges. The first mini challenge is I want you guys to write a code that takes in a number from the user and indicates if it's positive or negative. The second mini challenge is I want you guys to write a code that takes a number from the user and check if the number is divisible by 3 but is not multiple of 7. And the last mini challenge is I want you to write a code that takes a number from the user and indicate if the number is even or odd. Okay? And what I'm going to do here, guys, I'm going to ask you to please go ahead, pause the video, give it a shot, and then in the next video, I'm going to show you guys detailed solution for this. So please stay tuned, best of luck, and I will see you guys in the next lecture. Hello everyone, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we are going to solve the mini challenges for section number 3, which is simply our conditional statement. Okay. so let's go ahead and cover the first one. The first mini challenge is write a code that takes a number from a user and indicate if it's a positive or negative. All right, so what I could do right now, I can say the following. I can first say x equals 2, and then I'm going to say input because I wanted to get input from the user. And here I can say the following. Please enter an integer, because I'm asking for an integer number, right? And what I could do right now, and that's very important, whatever the user will enter, I need to take that and cast it as an integer. So I'm going to say int, and then I'm going to open parentheses here, and then I'm going to come here and close the parentheses. Think of it this way. So now if I add a little bit of space, and maybe a space here, the user will enter whatever number here, and then we're going to take that, convert it into an integer, and put it in x. That's basically what we're doing. Okay, and then once I have x, then I can make a very simple if condition. I can say if you find whatever number the user has entered is less than 0, and add a column, and here I'm going to print out, well, this number is negative. Very simple. And then afterwards, I'm going to say the following. Well, the number might be positive and the number might be 0 too. So that's why, because I have 3 paths right now that I need to create. So now I'm going to add another else if condition. So I'm going to say else if, and if you find x is greater than 0, well, this number will be positive. So I'm going to print out the number is positive. And then the last part, well, if this condition is not satisfied, so it is not negative, and if this condition is not satisfied, which means it is not positive, well, it has to be 0. So I'm going to say, well, else, anything else, just go ahead and print out the number is 0. All right, let's go ahead and give it a shot. Shift enter, here we go. Please enter an integer, and maybe I'm going to say -10, for example. If you press enter, here we go. The number is negative. Basically, I came here, the number was less than 0, so this condition is satisfied, and then I'm going to exit everything, and that's it. I'm going to print out number is negative to the screen, and we'll call it a day. Shift enter, maybe let's enter number 0. If you press enter, here we go, you will find that now the number is 0. And please note, what I'm doing right now is actually a crucial step when we debug any code. If we have, let's say, a code like this that have, let's say, 3 branches, you know what, something might be written here, and then something might be written here, and something might be written here. When we try to validate any code, we try to test every single condition and every single, I would say, use case to make sure that we have full coverage and the code actually makes sense. So let's go ahead. So now we tested the negative, we tested the 0. Let's go ahead and test the positive. If you press shift enter, here we go. Let's insert maybe number 8. You press enter, here we go. The number is positive. So basically, if the number is 8, I'm going to go here. 8 is not less than 0, so I'm going to skip that. And then I'm going to go here, say, is 8 greater than 0? Yes. So I'm going to execute that part, and then the number is positive, and that's it. Okay, let's take a look at mini challenge number 5. Let's go ahead and write a code that takes a number from the user and check if the number is divisible by 3, but is not a multiple of 7. Okay, so I know it sounds a little bit confusing, but trust me, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so let's give it a shot. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say I equals 2. I'm going to cast whatever value as an integer. And then I'm going to say input. And then I'm going to write, let's say, enter a number between 1 and 100, for example. So here the user will insert a number, and that will be I. And then I have to write an if condition. Actually, I have to write 2 conditions. The first one, I wanted to say, okay, if the number is divisible by 3 or not. So in order to do that, in order to check if a number is divisible by 3 or not, I can simply do the following. I can take that number, okay, and then I'm going to use a what we call it a remainder. So if you write percentage sign here, and then I write 3, basically what I'm saying here, I'm going to say, okay, take the number I, which is, let's say, for example, number 9, for example, okay? And if I say remainder 3, that means take the number 9, divide it by 3, and obtain the remainder. That's basically what I'm saying here. So if the user insert, let's say number 9, 9 divided by 3, well, it is 3, right? Which means the remainder here is 0. So basically the outcome out of this will be 0. Simply put, if you wanted to check if the number is divisible by 3, for example, or not, you take that number, you divide it by 3, take the remainder. And if you find that remainder is equals to 0, which means the number was actually divisible by that number. So the number that you use and enter, for example, let's say it's 9, 9 divided by 3, you take the remainder, which is 0. Then if the remainder here is 0, that means the number was successfully divisible by 3. Let's assume that the user insert, let's say, number 10, for example. So 10 divided by 3 is actually 3 also, right? But there is a remainder of 1. So now the remainder will be not equals to 0, right? So now this number is not divisible by 3. Okay, so that's the first part. And what I'm saying here, but is not a multiple of 7. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say the following, and, okay, and now I need to take the number, which is again I again, and now I wanted to say it's not a multiple of 7, which means if I take the remainder, so if I take the remainder of 7, so if I take the number divided by 7 and take the remainder, and if that remainder is not equals to 0, that's basically exactly what I have in here. That means this number is not a multiple of 7. Because if it's a multiple of 7, you will take the number, you will divide it by 7, you will get a remainder, and then the remainder will be equals to 0. And now I'm simply checking if it's not equals to 0. Okay? All right, so basically if I find this condition, I'm going to say, go ahead and say print, I'm going to say number satisfies the requirements. Okay? Which is simply the number is, it's divisible, number is divisible by 3 and not multiple of 7. Okay, all right. What about the else part? So I'm going to say else, and I'm going to say here print the number does not satisfy the requirement. Number does not satisfy the requirements. Okay, so please note that here there is a mark here showing that there is an error, something is missing, and you will find that basically here it's telling you we forgot a quotation mark here just to close the string. Let's go ahead and check it out. If you press Shift Enter, and it's telling you enter a number between 1 and let's say 100, for example. So for example, if I insert let's say number 9 and you press Enter, that's what you get. You get that number satisfies the requirement. Basically, if the number 9 is divisible by 3, so this part was true, and this number, which is 9, is actually not a multiple of 7. When I say multiple of 7, that means 7, 14, 21, and so on. Okay, so that means this number satisfies the requirements. Okay, let's go ahead and give it another shot. Shift Enter and maybe insert, let's say, number 12, for example. Press Enter. This number satisfies the requirement as well. Why? Because 12 is divisible by 3, because the remainder is 0, and then 12 is not a multiple of 7. Okay? Let's go ahead and maybe try number 21, for example, and you press Enter, you will find that that number does not satisfy the requirement. Why? Because number 21 is actually divisible by 3, right? But it is a multiple of 7. Okay, because 21 is essentially a multiple of 21 divided by 7 is actually 3. Okay, so basically that's here. So you will find that one of these conditions is not satisfied, and you will go here and you print out that the number does not satisfy the requirement. All right, looks perfect. Let's go ahead and cover the last mini challenge. Here, write a code that takes in a number of the user and indicate if the number is even or odd. That's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to say x equals to int input, and here we're going to say please enter a number between let's say 1 and 1000. Okay, all right. Next, I'm going to say, simply put, if I wanted to know if the number is even, that means this number will be divisible by 2. So if I take the number, let's say 4, and if I divide it by 2 and I get 0 remainder, so that means the number was actually divisible by 2, that means this number is even. If there is a remainder, that means the number is odd. So let's say number, for example, 3, if you divide it by 2, you will find that there will be a remainder, right? So the remainder, because there is a remainder, that means this number is odd. Very simple. So I can say if you find x, and if you say again percentage, mean I am obtaining the remainder. If I take the number and if I divide it by 2 and I obtain the remainder, and if you find that remainder equals to 0, so there was no remainder, well, this number is even. So I'm going to say print, again, number is even. I'm going to say else, well, print out the number is odd. Number is odd. That's it. Really simple. If you press Shift Enter, here we go. Let's say I insert number 10, for example. So I say 10. Well, this number is even. Why? Because number 10 divided by 2 is 5. And there is no remainder because this number is actually divisible by 2. So here, this condition will be true. So that means I'm going to print out the number is even. Let's go ahead and give it another shot. Maybe try number, let's say 21, for example. And you press Enter, the number is odd. Why? Because the number 21, if you divide it by 2, the answer will be 10 and a remainder of 1, right? Which means that the remainder is not equals to 0. So this condition is false, okay? Which means I'm going to go here and execute the else condition, indicating that this number is odd. All right, okay, so that's all I have for this lecture. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let's go ahead and cover what we have done here in notebook number 3. So in this notebook, we have covered the comparison operators. We'll learn how to do compare two numbers, greater than or equal, less than. We covered also comparisons between strings as well. And we went through a quick mini challenge. In part number 2, we covered logical operators. We learned about true and false, Boolean, and we have also covered how to perform the simply combination between conditional operators and logical operators. We also went through 2 mini challenges here along the way. And the last part was the conditional statement, and we have been able to cover the if-else condition. As you guys saw here, it was pretty straightforward, and we went through 3 mini challenges along the way. All right, okay, so that's all I have. I hope you guys enjoyed this lecture, and see you in the next one.